We are creatures of desire. What we most desire is meaning. What makes us suffer most is a lack of meaning.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Marital therapist, author, and communications trainer Andrew G. Marshall invites guests from all walks of life to discuss what makes life meaningful.
Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall. Welcome to The Meaningful Life. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, and wherever you find your podcasts. It's time for a completely different approach for lovemaking. Instead of focusing on creating hot, passionate sex, my witness today suggests cooling down and entering a more meditative and more sensual space, rather than rushing towards orgasm. She says you will increase sensitivity and restore love if you slow down. Diana Richardson has been running Making Love retreats with her husband for couples since 1995, and she's the author of 3 new books that come in a box set. They include Tantric Orgasm for Women, Tantric Orgasm for Men, and the one we will focus on, Slow Sex, the Path to Fulfilling and Sustainable Sexuality. I was stunned by a statistic in your book. The universal time of a sexual encounter is estimated to be between 2 or 3 minutes. If it's true, we must be doing something very wrong.
Yes, hello, Andrew. Yes, look, it is a very interesting subject. But, basically, we just get overexcited in sex. And that, diffuses the whole situation, or short fuses the whole situation. A lot of the tension is anticipation, so already then it starts to build up, and then there's more tension, is it going to happen? Especially for men, am I going to get in there? Will she allow? Or, because there's a lot of variables in that entry situation. So often, when the man finally enters, there's just an explosion. So this is the short fuse, but a lot can be done. A lot can be done.
Well, I just love your approach. I mean, there's all sorts of ideas that I'm looking forward to unpacking with you, but I think I'd like to sort of know little bit more about you. How did you become a sex educator?
By accident. I started with my own sex life. When I was early 30s, I read some work, some words of Osho, who's a Tantra master, on lovemaking, on Tantra, and then also heard about this master in Australia, Barry Long. So this was early 80s, right? So Osho was very much in expanded terms, but not very concrete about penis and vagina, but Barry Long really talks very concretely in that. And so I just experimented with certain tips, over some years, and suddenly you move into a completely different world. And then when I referred back to Osho, I was like, wow, now I know what he's talking about. So it really came from a personal curiosity. I had no aim or goal. And so I'm, surprised to be sitting here with you today as a sex educator. But really it's great. And I really enjoy doing it. And I think it is really important actually for our society these days, because the whole sexual perspective is twisting and turning, that we're losing a lot our connection to our nature, or, the sensuality, the presence, and so on.
And in a sense, we need a bit of a revolution about how we view sex. And you're saying instead of doing, we need to move towards being. So unpack that for me, please.
Yeah, we need a total revolution, Andrew. The problem with sex is that it's all come through imprinting, through the sexual conditioning, which happens unconsciously from when we grow up. Plus, sex, we see sex is very, very visual today. I had sex before I saw sex. So one approaches it as an innocence and exploration and whatever. But these days, most people have seen sex before they have sex. So this really is a big loss of innocence and natural curiosity or exploration. So our minds have been impacted. And of course, visually, it's looks like the hotter, the better, the more intense, the more kind of bizarre, the better. But basically, this all amplifies the imagination and the excitement And it actually distorts really what's happening with our bodies. Or rather, we can say that our minds tell our bodies what to do or dictate the journey. It's not the choice of the body. The body is like helps as much as possible. But the problem is that, this like real emphasis on sensation and more intensity, ultimately the system gets numb because you can only take so much sensation. So really the kind of like the orientation or the return to innocence or the return to naturalness and egolessness, one can say is, to return to your senses, your work on your sensitivity. So we say it's a shift from sensation to sensitivity. So that is a journey, but it needs more connection to the body.
And the whole body, rather than just the genitals and the breasts.
Yes, that's absolutely right, because that focus also leads to a lot of expectation, and it's involved in like this whole idea of big, great cosmic experiences. But the more we can spread that sensitivity over the body, in fact, it's better to start with toes and fingertips and come back into the core of the body. But we can, generally speaking, say that there is almost zero body education in our society. The whole emphasis is in the mind. We're not taught how to walk. We're not taught how to sit. We're not taught how to go to the toilet. Not taught how to eat, like chew 100 times, So there's a lot that happens with the body that is just taken for granted as instinct or we should know. So, of course, this applies to sex in a very radical way. Like I say, it comes from imprinting, sexual conditioning, which happens unconsciously. It's something out of our control. So on that level, we're not responsible. We have kind of like learned a whole lot of stuff that we have to unlearn. And the big shift is to come to the body and to start to use the body, because we mostly walking around in our minds, thinking, is to start to use the body like as an anchor point, because there's a lot of talk these days about the present moment, the here and now. Now, it's very abstract, but how do you actually do that? It is through the body, because the body exists in the present moment. So the body is the bridge to the present, but it requires one, we have this tremendous capacity of awareness. Well, these days it's called mindfulness, which I'm not fond of that term. So we can use that mind, which would normally be thinking, we can direct it inwards and start to perceive and feel. And that is like a journey of reconnecting with the body. And some people are more connected to their bodies than others. But for every individual, it is, like it's vital, including the sex life, but not only the sex life.
So give me an idea of how I could connect better with my body, something that is going to help in the sexual sphere.
Well, basically, the first thing is to come present to the body. And what I always do, and when I'm working with couples in the retreats, the first thing is to start to sense the midline of the body. Now, the midline is the spine, and many people can't feel the spine, but that is the midline. And once we have the midline, we are symmetrical around that, because the body is totally symmetrical, not in the organs, but in the skeleton. Of course, there's no straight lines, but it is perfectly balanced. So if we start to get a sense of the midline, like now as I'm talking to you, I pull myself up and feel that midline. Now, when we're standing, that's very important. Like now sitting, I can bring myself onto my sits bones. When we're standing, it's really important to stand with your weight equally distributed, 50-50, because many people are standing 25-75. So you're out of alignment. And then it's very difficult to bring the attention into the body. So I insist, and it's very difficult for people to remember this, but stand 50-50, not with locked knees, slightly softened knees, because even if you push your knees back and lock, that blocks the access to your body. So stand 50-50, feel the midline, and then take the attention, what I say, in and down, because, our whole society is all up and out. Being extrovert is given a value, being introvert or inwardly oriented is given no value at all. So the thing is to shift from up and out to in and down. And then what I tell to people, and most people can manage this, is like look inside your body for a place that's easy for you to feel. So like now as I'm talking to you, if I just go and say, oops, I can feel my solar plexus quite nicely, or it could be my lower belly, or it could be the chest area. but anywhere below the head and neck, could be the low back, whatever, and use that as an anchor point to bring you back to the present moment or bring you back into your body. And basically what we want to start to get a sense of is the inner body. There's so much focus on the outer body and how we look and how we dress, but there's not much attention or orientation on what we perceive and what we feel, on an aliveness level. Not anything great, not anything at all sensational, but very sweet, little movements of vitality or little sparkles or something. Some people are pretty numb to themselves, so it does take a little while, and it's really good to practice these few little tips, but also get a lot of massage, get body work, do exercise. But then again, a lot of exercise is extrovert, like how competitive or whatever, but one has to regain that connection to the body.
Have you ever heard of gyrotonics?
I've heard the word, but actually what is involved, I don't know.
So it's very similar to Pilates. So you are working on machines. When I say machines, these are wooden machines that are helping make your movements correct. And you work one-on-one with a teacher. And it's like Pilates, but they claim it's 360 degrees. And I've always been very alienated from my body because I was brought up in a traditional English school where the mind was all that counted and we had to tame the body with long runs and rugby kind of thing. And when I started doing this exercise, and I do it in a very gentle, meditative kind of way, I suddenly realized that my body was moving how it should be moving rather than how it had been moving. And suddenly I sort of made contact with my body. And when I would stand up after that exercise, I would just feel my body, how it had realigned. And it was, a very delicious and beautiful sort of kind of feeling. It made me realize how alienated I was from my body.
Well, that's really beautiful, Andrew, and that really can encourage people to explore. And what you say is really on track, because the intelligence, our real intelligence, is housed in the body. The body knows what to do, how to do, when to do, but we're overlaid with mind and, like you say, discipline, like rugby, running, whatever like this. Yes, so that's why it's beautiful for people to start to find practices, for instance, like Tai Chi, which is very slow, but afterwards you just feel amazing on the inside. And I do remember actually, quite some years ago, there was an English guy. He was in his 50s. He was in our Making Love retreat in Switzerland. And he just said to me, I'm over 50 years old, and nobody has ever suggested to me that I take my attention inside my body. He said, and it is paradise in there, which was just so beautiful that he could experience that. Yeah, so it's a big shift, when one is more present in the body, it changes your day, without even talking about sex.
I work with couples as well. I work with psychological material. I obviously talk to them about sex as well, but that's not my main focus. My main focus is the relationship between the two of them. But one of the things that lots of people report to me over and over again is how to get into the zone. By that, I mean how to get out of the everyday world where we're collecting children from school, we're cooking supper, we're answering emails, into a sensual zone or even a sexual zone where something could happen. How do you help people navigate into that? And of that, I think what I'd be really interested for you to talk about is something that you say sexual arousal is not a prerequisite for going into the zone, nor lots of energy. So tell me about that, because that's another revolutionary idea for most of my clients.
Well, let's start at the beginning where how to get into the zone. Look, we need to make time for it. It's simply like that. We make time for all kinds of things, but we don't make time for intimacy, which is hopefully very nourishing. So we suggest you make a date. You put 2 to 3 hours aside, have a shower, do some dancing, move your body. Some people like little rituals to bring, stepwise into the present. But essentially, that's what you want to do, a step into the present. Now, the thing is, the present is elusive. You're going to flip to your mind, but you just keep coming back to the body, and it is a practice. It is unfortunate in the sense that, parents prioritize their children, which, of course, they are a priority. But what is of the highest priority is the love between the parents, because that sustains the whole unit. And children are also terribly sensitive to a lack of love or tension or like little toxicity between parents. So, and this distorts the children. So it's really important that parents make time, get caretakers, but even adults, with our children, like you say, emails, whatever, you just need to put aside time. It is a bit awkward in the beginning because usually sex happens like accidentally. We think it's spontaneous, but it's more just like, by the by. So it is a bit strange in the beginning to be so deliberate and intention about it, but it really, really works. Otherwise, people just don't naturally flow into it.
One of the things that I believe is the best sex aid of all is a lock on the bedroom door. And when I've actually suggested this to some couples, they are just completely horrified. They say, what if our child needs us? And I said, well, they can knock on the door. And they say, well, what if there's a fire? And I said, well, the child can shout fire. But just this idea that there's a private space for parents is something that people have a sort of, they want to rebel against. They want to be available for their children all the time. And yet they also want to have a passionate and intimate love life. And the two things can't go hand in hand.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's excellent advice. Lock the door. Even these days, like with telephones, there was a time where we didn't have telephones. We couldn't contact each other. The kids went out or your husband went out. You couldn't phone each other every 5 minutes, So this thing of availability is really like, it's too much. It's too much.
So what's the difference between the rhythm of men and women? Because if they're coming together, we need to understand these different rhythms.
It kind of goes back to this question of sexual arousal. Sexual arousal, in what we understand, is being really horny. In German, you say geil, or just being horny and hungry. But this is like due to a lack of fulfillment, a lack of having sex. But if you can bring the bodies together in a more neutral state, in a more relaxed state, then, like we said, the bodies have their own intelligence. So to feel horny is not a prerequisite. Bodies are happy to be together. They like skin and skin. And, if lovemaking happens out of that, it's going to come from a much cooler space. But it's hard for our minds to get that, right? Because we always think of this like hot, fiery, passionate thing. And that's what we see in the movies, which is also disturbing our intelligence, body intelligence, or disturbing us. So the thing with less sexual arousal, the temperature is lower. And this is ultimately what we want to do, is to reduce the sexual temperature, to become cooler. Because one can only be hot for so long, but one can be cool for an eternity. And this is why, because of this high arousal picture we have of sex, it needs lots of energy, pumping away and getting all, physical. But actually, one can join in a much more relaxed way that doesn't require energy. It requires more presence and being there. Now, to come back to the difference between men and women, this is quite a big gap between women's wish for sex and man's wish for sex. And it's a delicate subject, and I really do suggest that people read up on it. It's quite a bit of a challenge to explain in the here and now, but I'll do my best. But basically what one can say is that the male body, the sexual energy is raised fairly quickly. And the female body, the sexual energy is raised very slowly. So this is a vital difference between us that we don't really understand. So women, usually when they have sex, their bodies are not really ready. So then they allow man into their body because, okay, he's got an erection and he's afraid of losing that. Woman's afraid that he's going to lose it. So let him in. But it's only half-hearted. And women know that we would love to say, let's kiss, let's cuddle, let's spend an hour in bed and wait. So this is a huge difference. And one of the reasons for that time that is required for the female body is that the sexual energy or the vitality in the female body is raised from the breasts and the nipples. Now, I don't mean radio dials and stimulating like this, but women becoming more anchored in their breasts and men supporting women. Again, not in a way to make excitement, but just holding and bringing warmth and awareness there. because it is here that the sexual energy or the vitality is awakened. And then this flows and overflows and opens the vagina. And then a woman is ready. Then a woman is ready, like, please come inside me. Not, there's this enthusiasm, not this like, oh, all right, So this is an important difference. So in the female body, it's not the clitoris that is the center of female sexual energy, as is mistakenly believed. I mean, certainly she's sweet, but she does trigger excitement. And again, this raises the temperature and sends the sex in another direction. You see, the vagina, she's a receptive organ, right? She's designed, if you look at the form, the penis is a channel. It extends from the body. The vagina is a canal inside the body. So one channels, the other one receives. So if a woman gets excited, it disturbs totally that receptive quality. In fact, it makes the vagina like hungry but demanding, overexcited, and that makes a man come very quickly. So the more a woman can stay away, and a man, from the clitoris, not in any denial way, but just like understanding, and come more to the breasts and really wait until the vagina opens, what we can say in like a magnetic way, because that's ultimately what we're dealing with, is body magnetism. Then she can really receive, and then male vitality, male sexual energy has got somewhere to flow. The woman receives it and, circulates it and so on. So this elevates totally the quality of the exchange. It's not just, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, as that saying goes, but really it requires presence and connection and sensuality. It's a totally different picture, Andrew.
And the thing that you write about, which I have to say was a shock to me, and I have to admit my ignorance here, but the whole idea of a soft entry. So we don't have to have an erect penis for it to go into the vagina. We can do a soft entry. And I'm ashamed to say that's a revolutionary idea for me. So I think it's going to be a revolutionary idea for a lot of my listeners too. So tell me about a soft entry.
Well, it's really such a great support, Andrew, because in what we call conventional sex, it can only happen if there's erection. Now, this puts a huge stress on man. He's got to have an erection. So man is carrying the burden of performance. And this performance pressure is like first and foremost in his mind, not his connection to his body, his connection to his partner. It's just, am I going to get an erection? And B, am I going to hold it? All men know, and women also know from being with men, that, it's not a button you can push, erection. Sometimes it's happening and sometimes it's not. And as much as you want it to happen, it might not be happening. So there is this way that soft entry, which obviously, usually the woman puts it inside, and this is kind of described in my book. You kind of walk the penis, you oil it, bring it close to the labia, you lie in the scissors position, and you kind of like with your fingers walk it into the vagina. Now, he might just go in a few inches, just the head or a little bit more, but then you're in, and that's great. And then from there, you wait to see what happens. Now, the more present you are, the more you can feel that, even without erection, my penis is sensitive. I can perceive something. Okay, it's not hot and exciting, but that's, in our view, a good thing. There can also be, in that, if both couples are present, what we can call the spontaneous erection, meaning an erection starts then to happen through the magnetism in the vagina, not through excitement or fantasy. That's another big problem in our sexual connections today. Also to realize that in this more subtle picture, that the vagina, the condition in the vagina, is as important as the penis. So it's like 50-50. The more a woman can just relax her vagina, open her vagina, be in her vagina, and obviously in her breast too, which is, spreading the awareness. And this has an impact on the penis. So it is coming down to earth. For a lot of men, it's like they're so used to associate or identify their manhood with their capacity to be erect. And this is tremendously sad, because it's not like that. That's not what makes you a man. What makes you a man is a capacity to be present, to be patient, to be in the here and now. So because of this erection difficulties, which are getting more and more common and prominent, there's a lot of self-doubt in me, a lack of self-trust, fear to go to a woman in case of premature ejaculation or even ejaculating outside. But it's definitely worth, if you're in an established couple, to experiment with that and learn how to do it and so on. It's not difficult. But yeah, it's great, Andrew. Try it. Have you tried it yet?
I haven't tried it yet, but it's something that I'm certainly interested in. I mean, we always used to, in my training, we used to call this a warm visit, this idea that a man enters the vagina and they just stay there. They don't have to start thrusting.
Well, exactly, Andrew, exactly.
And just the idea of somebody opening up to you is so beautiful, rather than you pushing it in, and it feels sort of quite intrusive rather than welcoming. So it is a beautiful idea. And
I love this distinction between intrusive and welcoming, because really when a man feels welcomed by a woman, by the vagina, this is so deeply touching, rather than, like pushing in, intruding. The door is not really open. And yes, with erection, one can go in and just lie there. And I remember, and this is beautiful, it's like just an example of how our innocence has been distorted. A young man, actually here in Switzerland, he said to me, after he'd actually been to our retreat a couple of times, and he said that when he first heard, as a young boy, I don't know what age he was, I guess early teens, when he first heard that a man put his penis inside the woman, he just thought that was so amazing, because he visualized he would just go inside and lie there and be there. And then, then he became, over the time, conscious of the fact that, oh my God, I've got to go in there and do something. So he, distorted his own nature. I mean, that is the function of imprinting and seeing sex before you have sex. So yeah, it's all more about warm visits, because, ultimately when we talk about sex, generally speaking, we're talking about love. And that's what everybody is longing for, and what everybody finds very difficult to sustain.
So how does this slow sex restore love, do you feel?
Well, the thing is that to go into, I've got a book called Slow Sex. Now, it is a slight misnomer. I would not have called it that. The publisher wanted that, and which was fine. I can deal with it. But actually, and I did, I wrote a whole book. It was very good. Well, I mean,
it is very good. Yeah. I'll vouch for you.
Oh, thanks. There is one pre-step to slowness, and that's awareness. So it's not like you go slow, because that's like a technique, and it's not about techniques. It's about presence and awareness. So the moment you're aware in your body and you start to move, you go slower. It's just a natural byproduct. And then when you go slower, the tendency is to be more sensitive. And everybody knows that. I mean, I ask in the groups, who's observed when they go, with the steps, awareness, slowness, sensitivity? Everyone will put up their hands. And I say, okay, you know that, but we don't trust it, or we don't make it like our way. So the bottom line is awareness, and it's just simply a reality, a spiritual alchemy, that awareness creates love, and that's it.
And I think we need some time metrics to make people realize just how slow a slow sex state is. You're saying 3 hours.
That is a good amount of time that one can relax into. So you don't have to have being hooked up, being man inside woman for 3 hours. I mean, certainly it can be like that, or longer. But it's just like for the psyche, for the mind, for the body, just to come down to earth. 3 hours is a good time. Like 1 hour is a bit short, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And then 2 hours, well, that's not so generous, right? It's still, but 3 hours really allows you to land, prepare, connect, let things unfold.
And this is something that I'm a big fan of, is what I call aftercare. So when you finish, for want of a better word, the main event, there's plenty of lying and stroking and chatting and sort of re-entering the ordinary world together. And, if I could have one thing for every one of my clients and every one of my listeners, and that would be more aftercare after sex. We put all the emphasis on the actual main event and the warm-up, and we put very little impact on the warm down.
Well, that is beautiful. That is really so important. The reason why, in the conventional sense, we feel actually quite disconnected after a conventional orgasm. There's a tremendous loss of energy, and you kind of lose that connection, that bonding. And it's pretty weird because you're so involved in this thing, and you come, and then it's over. And literally, so therefore the jokes, men turning over and snoring and so on, women feeling like unfulfilled and unhappy. So certainly, what you call aftercare, which is very nice, can bridge that. But it's important to realize, why does that happen? Why is there no aftercare? It's because of this just like loss of vitality. And the thing is that in conventional sex, we are used to finishing, right, with orgasm, okay? So when you start to stay away from orgasm, how do you finish? And this is often a question we give in the retreats. How do you finish? And there, definitely we recommend aftercare, meaning, you decide to disconnect. You're not disconnecting because you've exploded. You decide to separate your bodies, but then you just lie together, each one in his midline, this what I was talking, because even in the horizontal position, you can sense your midline, visualize it, and come back to the body and feel what has transpired in your body on a cellular level, this kind of inner body or paradise, or what, you were saying, how delicious it is. And be with that. So you're connecting with yourself, but you're still connected with your partner. There's many things one can do. One can kiss and cuddle. We do recommend, as a tool to stay present, is eye contact. But again, so you can have that. But it's not this extrovert looking. It's more this receiving through the eyes. So there's lots of little things you can do. But ultimately, because you've been in awareness all that period of time, and you haven't, out of habit, somehow like peaked it out and discharged, there is this natural sense of bonding. And then people get up and they go back to their family life, whatever, and they will feel still that connection. So it is a miracle, but I have seen it, obviously I experienced everything myself before I started to share with people. But people primarily come to the groups, our retreats, in a state of some kind of disconnection. Many couples haven't made love for years. There's so many, you will know from your work, so many like possible constellations. But honestly, within 3 days, and we haven't done much in the sense of, it's been 3 days, we've done a lot of body work, connecting with the body and so on, and explaining to people, and then people trying out in privacy. Everything happens in privacy. And within 3-4 days, people start to shine. And it's the shine of awareness and the shine of love. Of course, we don't catch everybody. Some people need a little bit longer because there's other levels. Maybe we could talk about it one day, this whole aspect of emotions and emotionality, which I'm sure is a huge part of your work. But so once that is clarified and explained, by the end of the retreat, which is a week, and we need a week because it requires time to reorient the whole thing, people are in love again. And it's to tap into that awareness, that presence, which is naturally there when we first meet. That's why it's so magical, because, you're totally in the here and now. So people often, what we call like tantric experiences, people often will have experienced them in the early phase of their relationship, like this thing of like, wow, just being so totally here and things unfolding moment by moment. And then, the relationship continues, but they never know how to get back to that space. It stays as a special memory, but it's just like, what was going on then? And what was going on then is we're more present. And it's so simple. And so then that is then the path or the direction. Certainly what we are doing in our retreats, but is to become more present to each other, not only in bed, around each other in the day.
So simple, but also so difficult to do. So we're going to look at a letter that's going to take some of these ideas into a practical field, and we'll be doing that in just a moment.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material and other benefits.
I have a newsletter which will give you all sorts of helpful information about the programme and also about various issues that I cover. You can sign up for that on my website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcasts, and you'll also find out how to participate in the programme. And this is the letter I have to discuss with Diana. How do we deal with painful intercourse? My wife complains about soreness and burning, and it's ruining our sex life. I think that a lot of the problems come from the difficult delivery of our first child. I've tried to be patient, but I'm a highly sexual person and miss the connection that comes with this special intimacy. It's been 4 years and I fear nothing is going to change. My wife wants to have sex in her head, but her body does not cooperate. So, Diana, I suspect this is something you've met before.
Absolutely, Andrew. And many, many women have pain during sex as something that's accompanied them from the whole life or after certain incidents like childbirth. Now, what is amazing is, and I've seen it time and again, this pain can be healed. But it requires man to be more present and patient, not like push into woman, give woman's body time to open up in the way that we talked earlier. That woman actually wants to receive man. Because, women, okay, men have this performance pressure, but women, what we have developed is a pattern of pleasing. So we will do anything to please our man because we don't want him to run out the door. And so we overcrossing our own boundaries. It is very hard to say to a man, wait, I need let's just kiss and cuddle because of this basic fear of man losing his erection. So certainly if a woman is given time and space and the man is conscious in his entry, this changes completely. Now, I just need to say that it's complex, but it's also simple. Like if a woman feels a pain point in her vagina, she must report that to her man, just say, stop, that is painful. And then the man must just not pull out of the vagina, but just pull back a hairbreadth to take the pain off the
spot, so to speak.
Off the spot, exactly. So it's like what we can call a slightly more a porous connection. And then very often, tensions and memories will be liberated in the woman. So like even like if the woman has had trauma and so on, a lot of the cellular memories can be liberated through, because the penis is like a highly sensitive magnet. And when he's used with intelligence and he just contacts in this porous way, these pain places, and woman opens herself to just, it could be tears, it could be shivering and shaking, the body will respond, and this liberates the cellular situation. So it's good to be aware that can happen, and also for women to say when something hurts, and man not to take it personally. Man not to take it personally and think he's doing something wrong, but it's no. A woman is reporting what she's feeling, and this is how we move ahead. And so this can be a process over time. There's many women have pain points in their vagina that can even refer to other problems in their body. So a tremendous amount of healing is possible, but it does require that man is present and patient and waits for a woman to say, please enter me. And if it doesn't happen, that he has an erection, that he goes in a relaxed way. And I must, this is a slightly provocative statement, but I feel I must say it, is that this man describes himself as a highly sexual person. Now, I would ask, is he a highly emotional person? In other words,
that's a very good question.
A lot of unexpressed feelings, that have been accumulated over a life and everything like that. Because when we are carrying a lot of unexpressed feelings and we're emotional, that translates into us as libido. And I personally find that libido is a misunderstood phenomenon. So men use women to discharge their emotional tensions. And this is kind of like standard, isn't it? Why I used to live in Italy and there's prostitutes on the side of the road. And then a guy in his truck just pulls over, because man needs it once in a while. That's the saying, right? But what is happening is that the survival stresses, the emotional stresses, the love stresses, family stresses, all this is building up unexpressed feelings, and this impacts the sexual center, and then man feels he needs it. But it's not to do with love. It's not to do with wanting to connect. So that's why when somebody describes themselves as that, I'm always a little bit, okay, let's inquire, like what else is happening.
Well, Diana, that's going to be an idea that I'm going to be taking away with me from this encounter, that next time a man says to me, I'm highly sexed, I'm going to say, are you highly emotional as well?
Right.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think I know the answer to this 99 times out of 100, because unfortunately, men have been trained to disregard their feelings, but they've been trained to be very aware of what their penis wants. And if you're not listening to your body, but you're listening to your penis, half the time emotional material is not going to be felt in your body anywhere beyond your penis. So it's going to be seen as a sexual energy, but it actually might be something entirely different that you need. But, if we're not listening to our heart, but we're listening to our penis, guess where we're going to be thinking the problems are?
Yes, well, that's absolutely right, Andrew. And, basically from childhood onwards, boys are not encouraged to express their feelings, to allow their feelings. It's seen as like being a baby or being a girl. So men are blocking their feelings, independently of sex. Then it starts to show up in the penis. But it is important, and maybe, this is something we can talk about at another time, is to understand the difference between emotions and feelings, because these are terms that people do mix up very commonly.
I think you're right. Perhaps we are going to have to find another time to talk about this further, because we've run right out of time. We have got, of course, the bonus material, and in that I'm going to be talking about how to discuss sex with your partner. We think it should be easy because we know someone very well, but actually the more you know somebody, the harder it is sometimes to talk about sex. So if you want to hear this bonus material, you can subscribe directly via Apple or Spotify. If you want to become a supporter of The Meaningful Life and unlock the bonus material this way, here are the details.
You've been listening to The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. You can follow Andrew on Twitter, like him on Facebook, and please leave a review wherever you consume your podcasts. Making, editing, and distributing The Meaningful Life comes with substantial costs, and we'd like to ask for your help. Visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material for every program, send in a letter to be discussed by Andrew and his guests, and join a community of other people seeking to make their life meaningful. At the gold level, you get even more benefits. Production of The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall is by Michael Dooney. Social media by Madeleine Healy. Sound engineering and theme tune by Sebastian de la Luz Mendoza. And I'm Susie Colick. Please tell your friends and spread the word. Thank you.